Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting for the Carpinteria Valley Water District to order. Can we have a pledge of allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The roll call, please, Lisa.
Director O'Connor.
Here.
Director Holcomb.
Here.
Director Balch.
Here.
Director Roberts.
Here.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
5 present.
I got item number 3, public forum. Any person may address the board of directors on any matter within its jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. And we have Bob Franco from the public that would like to speak.
Good evening, Board. Just a couple of items that I wanted to discuss with you. Involves a little capital state water. First of all, I'd like to thank Bob McDonald for his timely and always informative articles in the CVN. That's very important that these keep coming. It's really good. One thing I want to press on you is how important it is that the ratepayers are informed well in advance of how much to expect in rate increases from CAP in whatever form it comes. I know this from my experience of being a longtime member of the city's rent stabilization control board. All our mobile home parks are under rent control, and every year park owners are allowed to increase space rents according to a formula based on the consumer price index. We review and publish the amount of the rental increase that park owners can impose on their tenants for the coming year. We announce this report well in advance of its implementation to give tenants ample time to prepare for the increase. I know from experience that there's going to be many of us severely impacted by the cap increases. So you can see how important it is to know well in advance of any rate increases, which I understand could be substantial. The other thing is the our state water. I've talked to plenty of people about this, and I've been told by many that if they knew what they knew now, they never would have voted for it, be included. It's our opinion that we must address as a problem of paying for state water that we never receive, or probably never receive, or very little. We have to divest from SWP or instill vigorous counteracting measures before cap charges come online. If these two come together, that's going to be very, very, very impactful to the community. I understand that the cap's going to be postponed or delayed till 2028. Is that correct? Job?
That's the completion date of the cap. Yep.
So it appears that you have sort of a window to work on this state water payments. It's not your fault that we have this awful conundrum, but this is something we can't pass on to the next board. This is on your watch, and you must face a problem head on and begin resolving it now. I hope you meet this challenge with the seriousness that it imposes. If there are mitigating circumstances that prevent you from doing this, we would like to hear about it. Otherwise, the answers and technology are out there. It's just waiting for you to find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, Bob?
Nope.
Any on the board? All right. Thank you. Then we got item number 4, the consent agenda. And are there any questions on item number 4A from the board members? Are there any questions on item B from any of the board members? And then I like to exclude number C right now because Norma is going to have some input on that. So we need approval for 4A and B, please.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director O'Connor.
Yes.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we got item number C. Norma, do you want to share some thoughts here?
Yes, so I placed a brief memo at your stations there. So the updating of the personnel manual is primarily done, it's routinely done after union negotiations are completed. And this time around, the revisions primarily consist of just legal compliance updates, so bringing the manual up to date on making sure it aligns with all the legal requirements, and then also just benefit adjustments related to anything that was changed in the MOU. And those include the COLA that you're aware of, some language in there to clarify the 980 schedules, the bilingual allowance that's in the MOU, as well as just the vacation cash out option that's in the MOU. So anything that was updated in the MOU is then updated in the personnel manual as well. So there aren't any other significant changes that were not included in the MOU in the personnel manual.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director O'Connor.
Yes.
Director Holcomb.
Yes.
Director Balch.
Aye.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we go to number 5, unfinished business, none. Number 6, adjourn to the regular board meeting of the Carpinteria Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I'd like to call that meeting to order. And the first item, or second item, public forum, any person may address the board of directors on any matter within his jurisdiction which is not on the agenda. Carolyn, you want to speak?
My name is Carolyn Frary, avocado grower, address 1390 Casitas Pass Road. For the past 2 years, the GSA has charged us based on our estimated extraction of groundwater for our crop of avocados. And these are based on calculations that the GSA has done. And for the past 2 years, the GSA water extraction estimates has been overstated 40 to 50% per what we are using. And I greatly appreciate that the GSA has been willing to adjust our allocations based on water logs that we have submitted to them. But where my big concern is, if I, as a grower, see a 40 to 50% difference in what I'm using as to what you think I should be using or would use, what are other growers using, and how is this going to affect your budget? Because you've allocated this much revenue based on these allocations that you think we're using when we're not using them. So here's an example. In 2022, it was $79 per acre foot of water. The estimate from GSA in our letter was 27.94 for one parcel. We have 2 parcels that adjoin. We used 17.66, so it was a 49.3% lower. And on our tax bill, if you did the difference between what was estimated versus what actual was, is $812. On our other parcel, you estimated 24.33. Our usage was 12.23, 50.27% lower, a savings on our tax bill of $955. And from the Santa Barbara County Control, Flood Control District chart of the rain from August of 2021 to 22, or September of 2021 to August of 22, the average rainfall in Carpinteria was 10 inches. Low rain gauge. So in 2023, we received our letter. Again, $79 an acre foot for water. Estimate was 17.39 by GSA. We used 9.26, 53.4% lower, and a savings on our tax bill of $639. Other parcel, estimate 14.55. We used 6.39, 44%, savings of $644. In the 2022-23 year, the average rainfall that year was 29.63 inches. so much higher amount of rain. So you can see from the 2 years, we had an under average and an above average rainfall. And what scares me is looking forward to 2027, when we get our letter from GSA, there will probably also be a rate increase, as there has been every 2 years. So if your revenue that you're anticipating coming in based on what you think we're using versus what's really happening, it's a little scary what those fees could be. And is there any cap on these fees? It doesn't seem there has been before. And there's many factors that affect how each avocado orchard maintains their groundwater in the valley and how they retain it. So I'm not sure that the GSA is really considering that when it comes to what you think we're extracting. Are we flatlands? Are we hills? Proximity to the coast, to the mountains, the type of soil, the groundwater quality. What groundwater you are pulling for could have a much higher quality than what your neighbor has. The groundwater percolation from the rain. What time of day does one water? I know we water later in the day because it creates less evaporation. There's many other, things to consider. And so, as I say, my concern is what the fees are what your income versus your revenue is going to be and how much you're going to. And if anybody needs statistics, I have them with the rain chart, so I'm happy to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Bob, any comments?
I can try to answer some of the questions within the information that Carolyn gave us. So is there a cap? There isn't a cap, because really what we do is we look at what our budgeted cost is, and then we look at how to allocate it across the users of the basin. That includes the water district. And so, if costs, for example, do go up, we don't, we project a couple of years ahead for the GSA. We have activities that we plan on doing in the next 2 or 3 years that we try to put costs to, and then we project out. And we don't see anything, we don't see any big costs coming. So unless the user base starts to shrink, then of course the per unit price goes up, because then you have less acre feet to spread it across. As far as estimating, we're very aware that there's variation from many of the factors that you mentioned. And we use a method in which we try to average, different lands and different farming practices, but crop specific, to come up with a factor. And then we apply it across the rest of the users that we don't have information on. Certainly there's problems with that approach. It's the best approach we have currently, but it's why we're headed towards this metering method, over what we're currently doing. And that's been something that we've heard from stakeholders, and we're trying to respond to that by developing this meter policy. And then as far as, if you're finding error, then other farmers are probably overpaying. But we do get a substantial number of responses from our letter. In fact, that's the reason why we send out the letter, is we want to hear from you. If your situation is different than what we're understanding it to be, we want to hear from you. So that mechanism was put into place so that we don't, just say, well, this is the number, too bad. We want to hear feedback. We want to understand. We want to be able to evaluate whether there's a difference. So.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Then we move on to, but thank you, Carolyn. I think that we want to hear it all. So just for the record, I told my family, if you want to be accurate, put in meters. And I think I got 12 cousins and brothers. And so far, only one of them put up a meter. So, obviously. Approval items. We got item number 3A and 3B. Any questions on 3A?
Is my name not on the list?
You want to speak?
Maybe I signed the wrong.
No, that's okay. Alan, if you want to speak, come on up. So, like I say, we want to hear it all. So it is.
Thank you, appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to mention, just last time I was here, noted that I was going to be writing an article for the CVN. Hopefully you got to see it, about nature-based groundwater recharge opportunities here in the Carpinteria Basin. Believe there's a whole lot of opportunity that's ripe for the taking, as it were. And look forward to working with you on that when the time comes. So had a good opportunity, Bob, thank you. We had a good talk yesterday, and you helped me understand some pieces about, you know, the groundwater recharge and also about the CAP project that will be discussed when you take off your GSA hats and put your water district hats back on after this part of the meeting. And in particular, and this was a distinction that I wasn't really clear on, that the CAP project, as I was understanding from how Bob was describing it, is not a groundwater recharge project. It's a water supply project. And you're going to use the groundwater basin to store that water and then remove that water from the aquifer to use for the water district supply. So what that led me to realize is that we still, even with the investment of the CAP project, are still going to have a need for groundwater recharge and for increasing the amount of water in storage for the water district, but also for the other users of groundwater, which frankly, you know, the agricultural interests end up using more of the groundwater in the basin even than the water district does. So that being the case, the significant investment that you're considering, and I'm not here to weigh in one way or the other on the merits of that, but you know, from what I read in the CVN, looking like borrowing $42 million to invest in that project, plus $1 million or $2 million in O&M over 50 years, another 50 to 100 million. That would go a long way. A fraction of that would go a long way towards natural recharge efforts. So once that investment decision is made, you know, whether it's made one way or the other, there will still be a need for additional resources for groundwater recharge, and here and available to help with that when the time comes in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any response?
Just that, yes, that's correct. We, you know, CAP is a water supply project. We intend to recover the water that we inject into the basin. It does have benefits to the groundwater basin in terms of localized effects from the mounding of water as you push it into the basin, but that dissipates. But, you know, it's sort of a continuous operation where we're putting it in, pulling it out. Under the GSP, we identified CAP as a beneficial project to sustainability, but we are also articulated that it wouldn't solve all of the groundwater sustainability problems. So there will need to be work done to look at methods, projects, management actions to continue to work towards sustainability under the GSP.
Thank you. Any questions on the board? Then we'll move on to, oh, sorry, that was item number 2. Approval items. Any questions on item 3A? Any questions on item 3B? If not, can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director O'Connor?
Aye.
Director Holcomb?
Yes.
Director Balt?
Aye.
Director Roberts?
Aye.
And Director Van Wingerden?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we got item number 4, unfinished business, none. Item number 5, 5A, consider presentation on stakeholder engagement for the Carpinteria GSA metering program for information.
Yeah,
Bob?
this is just kind of more of what we talked about in December, but we slipped a little bit on the schedule, but I wanted to kind of bring it back and tell you what we're looking at this point. So we heard, so kind of backing up the well registration metering policy, we haven't really talked much about the registration portion of it, but the policy will be two parts. One will be to try to understand all the wells that are in the basin, what their operating status is, what their approximate extraction rates and that sort of thing, just so we have a database and can understand when we are evaluating metering requirements for these various wells. The purpose of the metering policy will be, to define how we implement the metering program and how we operate it. We hope to have both of these policies in place in 2025. That's our goal. Originally, we had been thinking somewhere in March, April. That might be slipping till around June. But I think the most important thing about this policy and the process of developing this policy is that we need to get stakeholder input, because there's obviously a lot of opinions out there and a lot of concern about how this will be implemented, what it will mean, what kind of things that the private well owners will have to do, and both in terms of installing a meter and registering their wells. So, we had kind of looked at a few different ways to do stakeholder engagement on this. And, we've had in the past during the GSP development, for example, we had a citizens advisory group that we held every month and went over various topics. Obviously, the GSP is a much broader, more involved document than a policy to put in meters. So that required meeting once a month for 6 or 7 months and discussing all of the topics that we had to cover. And then during that time, we also had sort of community meetings, or town hall meetings, I guess, if you will, at the Lions Club. And those were not very well attended. And so as we've kind of learned from that, we want to improve on the way we do these things. And obviously, we think that the community meetings at the Lions Club weren't very effective. We held them, we advertised them, we recorded them, and we really didn't get much feedback from those. The GSPAC worked very well, and got lots of feedback from those meetings. But I think, again, to set up an advisory committee for this might be overkill. So what we're thinking at this point is we'd like to host what we call listening sessions, where we invite members of the GSPAC and other members of the ag community. And it's wide open. Whoever's interested can attend. And we have topics to discuss, similar to the way we did the GSPAC meetings, but a little bit, less formal. They wouldn't be Brown Act meetings, for example. We wouldn't actually designate any members. It would just simply be, we want these people to come, give us feedback. And so that's kind of where we're at with how we want to engage the stakeholders for this policy. How do we get their awareness, or how do we make them aware? Well, we want to send mailers to agricultural customers. So we have a database of all the agricultural customers we can direct mail, and that seems to work pretty well. We've had pretty good luck in terms of surveys that we've sent to agricultural folks. We've had good luck with this letter that we send out annually with the mapping and the estimates of pumping. So I think that's probably the primary way we'll generate awareness of the listening sessions and the policy itself. Also, Coastal View News is the old standard. It always seems to do well for us in terms of notifying people and making people aware, as well as social media. Nextdoor is really great in terms of Carpinteria folks. So we would also use those two channels to generate awareness. And then again, as I said, we would directly contact the GSPAC members, as well as some some members that we know and have worked with in the past, and let them know that it's happening and tell them to spread the word. So that's kind of our engagement plan. As I said, we would have 3 listening sessions, at least maybe 4 in March and April. They'd be both in person and online. And, the purpose would be to gather feedback before we move forward with finalizing a draft of the policy for your consideration. So some of the topics to be covered, timeline to implement programs, is a year long enough if we adopt it in June of 2025 to have everybody complying with the policy by June of 2026? Is that long enough? We want to understand that. Is it unrealistic to think it's only going to take a year? Meter accuracy is a big component and testing program is a big component of other GMAs and other GSAs that have a meter program. And so some do it differently. They do it on different frequencies. If you put in a meter, I think Scott Vanderkar mentioned, well, maybe if you put in a meter, you get a 2-year period where you don't have to test it, and then after 2 years, you test it every year. Those are the types of things that we want to hear about and understand what would work for everyone. Testing program, what does that mean? There are companies that will come out and actually do a field test on your meter. They just simply hook their meter onto your meter and they compare. That's one way. You can have it removed and bench test it. That's a little bit more accurate, but depending on the levels of accuracy, that might work for 95% accuracy, but for 98% accuracy, the field test probably wouldn't work. Meter configuration. So we have been surveying the wells that we know of, and there are about 300 wells that we know that exist. And we've surveyed about 70 of them. And one of the things that we're seeing is there are all kinds of configurations in these wells. There are wells with one pipe coming off and going to, whatever the use is. There are wells with one pipe splitting in 6 different directions and going to different parcels. And, do we put 1 meter on those? And if we do, and we're trying to collect parcel fees, how do we divide that up? Do we, do we want to have meters on each leg of those types of wells? We even found one well with 2 pumps in it, which I've never heard of and is something new, but do we put 1 meter on each pump in the well? So those are the things that we are understanding. Some of the other things that we're concerned about is we noted that there are wells out there that have a large diameter discharge pipe, but their pumping volume or the pumping rate is, 10 gallons a minute. So the large pipe is never full. So you can't really measure an unfull pipe. And so how do we configure that? You may have to put some restrictors on it so that backs the water up so it fills the pipe. Compliance metrics. So if we do set up, if we have a policy, it's implemented, we set up a system, and someone comes up, for example, to test their well. How do we manage that, and what are the ways that we can make sure that compliance is being met? It's similar to enforcement, although enforcement has a little bit more to do with making deadlines and that sort of thing. CGSA collection and access to meter data is one of the things that we're finding as we go out and try to inspect these wells is a lot of folks, particularly the cannabis folks, aren't interested in giving us access to the wells. And it presents a problem, particularly if we are planning to somehow collect the meter reads. We can do self-reporting. That's one way to do it. We can do an AMI system where we don't have to go on to the site. However, anytime you have equipment that you're relying on to report, you have to have a way to, verify. So if you have an AMI device out there that's sending information back to your system and suddenly it stops, you have to be able to get on the site. And so what is that going to look like, and how do we resolve the conflicts there? Enforcement, as I said, depending on the way we actually collect the fees, currently we collect the fees through the tax roll. There's a built-in enforcement mechanism, and that's sort of why we went that direction. If we were to direct bill, then we would have to enforce those collections. In other words, if someone decided, I don't think I need to pay, and we have to figure out a way to enforce that collection. And as I said, I think I described unique well situations. There are many unique well situations out there that we need to talk about and figure out how we work around those. And then finally, exemption to the program. There is one well, and typically under Sigma, these are called de minimis wells. They're residential wells that produce under 2 acre-feet per year. And there is one well that falls into that category within Carpinteria. And that would be a clear case of exemption from the program. There's also a lot of inactive wells, and so that's one other question that we came up with is, well, if a well is inactive, does it need a meter? And if it's inactive, how often do they need to report it's inactive? So in other words, they have signed an affidavit annually just saying well remains inactive. Are there any compliance mechanisms? Do we go out and inspect? Again, a lot of questions to be answered under this policy, and staff has its ideas looking at other agencies, how they do it. But again, we want to make sure we hear from the stakeholders and understand their opinion. So that's it. We'll be, you'll start to see the ads in the Coastal View and on Nextdoor pretty quickly. If you're an agricultural person, you'll probably get a direct notice here in the next couple of weeks.
Any questions? Holly?
My first question is really dumb. I know how hard it's been to get everybody on board and to have these meetings and all the same faces show up, for which we're grateful. And the committee that I was involved in, you've all heard me say how just terrific that was. But isn't there like a growers association or something? Doesn't that exist in CARP now?
Well,
okay.
The one that was very active was the flower growers, but they just shut it down because there's no flower growers.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay.
And the cannabis growers, they're on their own.
Okay.
Actually-
Okay. Oh, I just sort of thought that, in the valley that there would be a group that then Bob could be invited to, and that would get a little bit more
there's-
attention.
I think there's
Okay.
Calavo and Mission, and there's not a lot. I've never been invited to a meeting, and there's not that I know of.
Okay.
Is there a lot of
So,
meetings?
so then that brings me to my next point. In the beginning of your presentation, I was like, yeah, this did go, we are a couple months late because we were eyeing March, and now we're kind of getting into June, and we have a plan there. So, and at first, when you said, was it going to take a year? I thought, oh my God, of course we can be ready in a year. We're looking at doing the meters, and I was still cognizant of Scott's comments maybe even a year ago when he was talking about the meter that he purchased. And we were trying to be careful of making sure that everybody knew, would there be a group of meters or would we just do that, and all that. But now, as you go through that whole list, and not only that, in the beginning, everybody was screaming for the meters. Yes, yes, we all know that this is the right thing. And now, I'm not so sure that some of the community really want to have them, and then what do we do? So it could take a year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to take longer. And this is shifting from, yes, we all know we all want this, to maybe a substantial part of the community that doesn't really want meters and they're not going to do it. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So the implementation of the policy is what I'm talking about when I say a year. The development of the policy, I'm hopeful that it will only take a couple of months to get.
Oh, no, I understood that.
Okay.
Hence I stand by my comment. I really think the implementation might take longer than a year. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Anybody else? Actually, Bob, I think it's good that you advertise the meetings. I thought the Ag Advisor was very helpful when we did the whole GSA, but my understanding in Oxnard, I thought they gave the growers 12 months to get their meters on, and I think everybody complied, so I don't see what, yeah, so.
Okay, well, you know more than me, so I hope I'm wrong.
Well,
Yeah, and
we should check what Oxnard did, or the Oxnard Plains did.
Yeah, we're working with Fox Canyon is one of our sources of information, so we've been working with them to understand
Okay.
how and what issues they had when they were
Yeah,
implementing.
and there's a lot of opinionated growers living there, but they all complied, so it's good. Okay, item number 6, Executive Director's Report, Bob?
I'll let Norma handle the financials here.
Yep. Yes, in your packet for information, through December, operation revenue is at 90%. We expect to get some additional revenue before the year's out with the second installments. And operating expenses are at 31% through the year.
Any questions?
I'll just say that does not include the debt payment. So we typically wait till the end of the fiscal year for the debt payment from GSA to CVWD.
Okay, then we move on to item number 7, that we're adjourned on the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And then we we re-adjourned the regular board meeting of the Carpinteria Valley Water District. Item number 8, new business. 8A, consider CAP status update for information. Bob, Bob Morrow, is he online? Or-
Yeah, so we've been trying to do more frequent, as we're heading into the final stages of design. We're trying to do more frequent updates to keep you posted on some of the changes and things that are happening. And so Rob Morrow is here today on Zoom, and he will, there he is. He will present this section. And I did ask Rob to put in a map and kind of give a little summary of the project. All right. go ahead.
Okay, unmuted. Thanks, Bob. First off, it's nice to see everybody. It's been a few months since I've been participating in a board meeting, and looking forward for a quick update here. So there hasn't been much. Chris Maljean presented a little over a month ago to you guys. So I'll walk through some brief updates, and then of course answer any questions you have. And I think probably the biggest updates are in the funding realm. Next slide, please. So these are again all the topics that were covered last month. Some quick updates, and then a little deeper on funding and finance. Next slide. So a quick project overview. This is oriented with the beach ocean at the bottom of the screen. The Carpinteria Sanitary District's wastewater plant along Carpinteria Creek is shown there, with the green as where existing facilities are, and the red squares are where the advanced treatment plant will be going, as well as storage of water will be going. Then we're showing the purified water pipeline coming from the AWPF, the Advanced Water Purification Facility, coming from the Carp Sand plant across town to the Linden Avenue Bridge. Caltrans installed the pipeline when the bridge went in a few years ago, so we're just connecting to that pipeline on either side of the bridge. And then on the inland side, we'll be continuing to head down Linden until we get to Meadowview, and then on the right at St. Joe's Church, we will be installing an injection well, basically pretty near the corner of the field adjacent to the church and next to the parking lot. And then monitoring wells are located closer to the housing on the backside of the church. And those monitoring wells are sited to be between where the water is injected and where it's going to be extracted by the district. And so the district's El Caro well by El Caro Park is what that's going to be monitoring for, is the water going that direction. That purified water will continue also to the Meadowview injection well, which is near the entrance to the LDS church. And then similarly, there's a set of monitoring wells at the end of Meadowview, capturing the water that's heading towards the district's headquarters and the district's headquarters well. We have there's the El Caro monitoring well that was installed last year in coordination with Sigma, will also be used as part of the project. Our project description includes a monitoring well at Memorial Park, right by the district's headquarters. However, we're arguing that it isn't necessary because of the amount of time it takes to get there. So we're including that in the project, but we are hopeful we'll actually be able to remove it and not and have some cost savings there. So that's a quick overview of the facilities. Is there any questions before I move on?
I've got one, Rob.
Yep.
Could you just expand on why the El Caro monitoring wells that are pretty new can't handle like what the Linden monitoring wells are doing?
So it's the Title 22 regulations, which regulate recycled water, include a requirement for 2 monitoring wells between the injection well and the potable well, and one's got to be within 2 weeks to 6 months of underground travel time. Those are the ones that are pretty close, and then another one needs to be at least 30 days up gradient. So the regs require 2. And so that's why we originally included that Memorial well monitoring wells. But again, we're arguing that the other ones meet the intent of the regs, and we shouldn't have to put that one in.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Rob. This is Patrick. One quick question. Thanks for including the map, by the way. I asked for that in advance. Just to clarify, and forgive me for being simple, but the light blue is all new trenching, and the green is existing trenching,
That's right. Yeah. Sorry.
and the blue is all in public right away.
Yes, except a small segment where we have an easement in the parking lot just near Eugenia. That's connecting to Linden. I don't know if Bob, you have a better description.
I'm hovering over it here.
Yeah, there you go.
It's at the end of Eugenia. We cut through a parking lot here and then connect onto Linden.
We're trying to avoid impacts on Carp Ave and Linden Ave and that main intersection. So we went through there, and the district already had an easement there, and so we've expanded it as part of this project.
Yeah, it seems like pretty low impact, generally speaking. I mean, trenching's
Yes,
never
yeah.
pleasant, but
Yeah, generally it's relatively quick.
Yeah, and we have just a very small section here on Carp Ave.
you got to get
Yeah.
around that. Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. And I mean, we'll talk about this more in the future, but we'll definitely have lots of construction impact notification coordination. And that's Amy, who'll be talking about other topics today. It does a lot of that work. So anyway, we'll talk about that in the future. Any other questions?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, so design status, we're actually getting the 100% design documents on Friday. Also as well as an updated cost estimate. So next time we talk, we'll let you know of any changes to the cost estimates from the 90% design, which we presented back in October. We've reviewed the conveyance pipeline and wells packages from Woodard and Kern, the design engineer, provided comments. The Water District, Sanitation District both reviewed documents and going through comments right now. Nothing not too big a deal. The district's had a bunch of wells before and has installed pipelines, so there isn't, the AWPF is the new thing, so that's where we're taking the most time with. Next slide. So applications, so the conditional use permit, coastal development permit is the big permit for this project. We've been going back and forth with the city. We actually have a meeting with them tomorrow afternoon to go through a couple of their outstanding comments. From a program schedule standpoint, one of the things that we've been waiting on is getting, which we'll talk about in a minute, is getting all the easements in place. And so with the same progression with the St. Joe's offer, that will also help align, get that on schedule. And we're looking at an April-ish meeting, but there's still a couple more loose ends to tie up. On the waste discharge water reclamation requirements permit, that's from the regional board. That's required for us to inject the water into the groundwater basin. We had a couple meetings this past month with the regional board focused on anti-degradation, which is basically that we're demonstrating that putting this water in the ground doesn't cause any harm to its users. And so generally, this water that we're putting in is of much higher quality than the existing groundwater. So it's a fairly straightforward process, but it is a pretty rigorous process that's laid out. So we are actually going to be submitting the report to them in the next week or so, and that should be the main conditions from the regional board perspective that goes into our permit. The other component that goes in our permit is from the State Water Resources Control Board Division of Drinking Water. They're in charge of protecting public health from that perspective, whereas the regional board is protecting, focused on protecting groundwater quality. So DDW, we're actually meeting with on Monday and planning to get them the full report in May. But what we've been doing is, this is like a couple 100-page report. So we've been focusing on, just like with the regional board, like the biggest issues that could change project assumptions and add costs. And so we're following up on our previous meeting from before the new year on a couple items. And then the last thing is the Carpinteria Sanitary District's MPDS permit, which is their permit to discharge the ocean, is going to be modified to incorporate the discharge from the AWPF. And so we've Flow Science conducted discharge modeling, and we got the results a couple weeks ago. And so we're working with the Sand District and Water District to develop a strategy for permitting the project that basically aligns with keeping the operation simple and reporting simple, and and ensuring there won't be any permit violations. And so again, we've got we have a plan, and we plan to submit some information to the regional board in the next few weeks to progress that forward. But this is the last permit we're actually going to get, and we can't apply for it until the state board DDW approves our Title 22 engineering report. So that's at least a year out. So again, we're trying to address all of the items that have the most risk going forward, and so we're feeling good about this permit as well now. Next slide. Amy's going to talk more about outreach, but just we got the board listening sessions and market research. She'll be talking about today. We've been putting together some materials. We're not ready to fully share yet, but we're close. Craig Murray, with the GM for Carpinteria Sand, is actually in DC. I think he's on his way back from DC right now, and met with Carbajal and a few other representatives earlier this week. One topic was CAP, and so we put together a flyer for him to use for that, as well as for us to use for outreach to state representatives. But we're putting together materials for you as the board for staff, and for others just to have to be able to use either as an internal reference to understand the project or as an external reference. So those are all progressing. Next slide, please. So St. Joe's Catholic Church easement update. We sent out the offer. We've been talking to them consistently for the past year plus. Send the offer on December 20th. We actually received a counter offer last week. I mean, long story short is it's good. I think Bob knows the process better. I assume you guys will talk about it in closed session.
Yeah, we'll bring it back
Open
at the
session.
next board meeting for consideration, the counteroffer.
And so anyway, so that's good. Contractor outreach, since the last time when Chris talked last month, we had 2 more contractors visit the sanitation district site, so that's 4 total. We reached out to 9. There's a few more who have expressed interest, but have declined to make a site visit yet. So far the interest is good. As you know, the more competition and the more interest we can generate, the better quality product and the better prices we'll get. So this has been a focus of us recently. And then last thing is agreements. So just to recap, that you can go to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
Funding and financing. So the agreements in place. We have a integrated regional water management plan grant agreement from the state of California for 1.2 million. We've got a water recycling funding program grant for 5 million that's written into our SRF loan, which is actually 1.7%. I mistakenly put 2.1%. So low interest loan of 1.7%. And we've got an agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation, so federal funds of 9.7 million. Now, last year we got notification of an additional funds from Title 16, an additional 9.7. I'll talk about that a little more in a sec. And then we also last year the state board increased our grant from 5 million to 8 million, and I'll talk about that a little more. So I'll come back to both of those. So the first one, the federal funding status. As you probably heard, there's lots of executive orders and taking them back and a bit of chaos from a federal funding status. The good news is our status is a little simpler. The Bureau Title 16 funds is from fiscal year 24. Were appropriated at that time, so the money is there. But the way the Title 16 Act was written is after an award is notified, after the award is noticed to the recipients, Congress needs to write it into the next budget for it to then be for the Bureau to then hand it out. But we haven't had a new federal budget since we got notification last summer. And so we can't execute our amendment to our existing agreement and add that money in until it's named. And so that can either happen with a federal budget, the normal process, which may or may not happen depending on the day, or it can be named, and that's the normal process. And that, and then, or it can be named as part of a continuing resolution, which is how the federal government's been operating since the last fiscal year ended. That is a little tough. It's not as typical, but we have made our case to our representatives to do that, and there isn't a guarantee that we can be named in the next continuing resolution, but that's what we're trying to do, because at that point we can execute our amendment and we can not worry about that money anymore. It'll be a signed agreement with the federal government. But also what we've told them is that we're planning to bid this project in May, and so we need something by May. So that's actually helping us push to get named in a continuing resolution. Again, if there's a quick resolution of a federal budget, and we would be we would be named in there as well. So not anything definitive, but want to just give you a general update because there's obviously been a lot of stuff in the news on the federal funding, and there's been a lot of information that changes day to day, and so our focus is making sure we get that money in there, and there's no risk to the project going forward. So we'll keep you updated as we learn more. And then from the state side, we're waiting to hear how quickly we can get an amendment to our loan / water recycling funding program grant agreement. And so it should be pretty straightforward, but having gone through this past year, we want to get this in writing as soon as we can. So I don't have a specific timeline right now for you, but again, we'll provide an update. The Prop 4 was passed last November. It included about 380 million for water recycling and a separate pot of money for groundwater management. So kind of a Sigma type pot, GSP pot. And the governor's budget included money for both of those programs. We won't know how much is in there until the full state budget's actually finalized by June or so. But there's potentially money in the water recycling funding program next year. And so our plan would be to pursue funds within both of those programs. One of the details that we're working through, or everyone in the industry is working through, is that Prop 4 had some language in there that the funds wouldn't be released, grant funds wouldn't be released until 2026. But we're arguing that the water recycling funding program is an existing program, and so really it can be handed out quickly, and there's lots of projects that could use this funding, and so we're ready to use it for, and spend it. So let's see. I think that's it from the state funding status standpoint. Then I just have one more slide on milestones. So we're wrapping up February right now. In March, Westwater has been working on a water supply alternatives analysis with Bob and his staff for the last few months. We're looking forward to getting that analysis because it's looking at what are the alternatives to cap, what are those costs, and what are the avoided costs. And then that feeds into an update to the economic analysis that was previously done looking at, again, avoided costs, but also economic benefits to a reliable supply for the valley. And we'll be getting the final design documents for the pipeline and the wells. Amy will be talking about the community survey, but that'll be happening in March and reporting back in April. Tentatively thinking that planning commission hearing will be happening in April. And then current schedule is to advertise the AWPF in May, so that we're getting results come July. And then we'll advertise the pipeline and wells in parallel, so that we'll have all the numbers before the board makes the decision on those contracts. May, we'd also come with the operations agreement. We have a meeting with Water District, Sand District have a meeting maybe Friday or Monday. But the plan is to come to board and committees over the next few months to talk about that agreement. So that's the update. Is there any questions?
I had a quick one, Rob. On the Title 16 money, was that completely not settled, or is it just part of it that needed to be signed and finalized?
We have an agreement for the FY22 that first nine million and change, and then the most recent award, the FY24 award, is the one that we're waiting on the project to be named in a budget.
Perfect. And then one other question on the NPDS permit. I
Yeah.
know you said that's last, which is terrifying. But based on the water analysis, are there any constituents that they've identified that wouldn't kind of meet permits that exist currently that are troublesome?
And no, and that's what we've been. Yeah, no. So we looked at what we were looking at is different dilution assumptions depending on the flow and the quality of the flow or the concentration of the flow going out, and so it can be from 100% secondary effluent, which is what goes out today, to 100% RO concentrate, which is what would be going out most of the time with the plant treating all the water coming into the plant. And so those are the two main conditions, but there are going to be times where there's going to be conditions in between there, and that's what we've been working on, finding some sweet spots so that there's so that we're minimizing any kind of risk as far as an exceedance, but also making sure that the operation and reporting is simple. And so we're modeling this approach on what Monterey, One Water, and Soquel Creek Water District recently did in their permits. So we have a good framework to go by, and based on the analysis of the water quality, we don't see any issues.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Rob, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments, Bob?
No.
Okay, then we go on to item number 8B, consider draft survey questions for CAP public survey for action, Bob.
Yeah, I apologize. We should have put Amy Stevens' name on there as the presenter from WSC. And so Amy Stevens is here today from WSC to do the presentation. But I did want to say, you'll recall that we approved a contract with FM3 to send out a poll regarding the water district and the CAP project to try to better understand a few different things. And direction was given to staff to generate the questions, come back for your review. And so that's what we're doing today. So I'll let Amy take it from here.
Thanks, directors. All right, let's start the. Okay, so as Bob mentioned, these are the draft questions for the already approved surveys. So just a little bit of background. Right now, the survey is sitting at 20 questions with a time around 15 minutes. Our target was 15 to 20, so we're spot on there. The survey will be deployed in English and Spanish and through various media. Participants will be invited via phone calls, text messages, emails, and then some printed postcards with QR codes. They can complete the survey via phone or online. The audience is 18 and over of Carpinteria across all residential, business, and ag sectors. And then our sample will mostly pull from registered voter rolls, but to make sure we capture the ag and business community appropriately, we'll also be supplementing with the customer list. So I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to stop not on these first two, but I'll stop on the other questions for your comments and feedback. I just wanted to include these first two slides so you can see that the phone and the email introductions or the online introductions are just tailored to the format, but they both make it very clear that this isn't a scam. We're not trying to sell you anything. And that it is confidential. And another thing to note, responses will only be collected if the survey is 100% completed. So this isn't one where you can stop midway through and we collect that. It's better for comparing data if we have only complete surveys. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to dive right into the questions. Just some background screening and demographic questions. The year they were born, racial or ethnicity group, the last level of school you completed. And then we wanted to dive in on who we were speaking to. So are we talking to the bill payer themselves? Are we talking to a spouse or a roommate? Or are we talking to a renter? And there's no good or bad. We want all of it. It'll just, again, help with that stratification and data comparison. And then this last question, I will forewarn you, don't be alarmed because probably most people will get this wrong, but we also like to ask do you know who your water provider is? And that's can be a stumper for a lot of people. So I'll pause here. Any questions, concerns, or edits or comments?
I have a question out of curiosity. The 18 and over first birthday, how is that? If my 18-year-old kid answers the phone, he's not going to be of any help, I imagine. What's the first birthday relevance, and why isn't it like bill payer or something more specific?
Because we also wanted to capture renters as well. The messaging, so this is obviously going to inform the CAP messaging. And so the project will affect bill payers and renters or agribusiness differently. For instance, renters could still be impacted by construction or by wells or different things like that. And so, I mean, legally, we will not survey someone underage. So that's the rationale for 18 and over. In the intro, we actually do ask, if there's multiple people, if we get a home line or multiple people in the house, we do ask for sort of a random sample of that. But then the question about when it comes to your household bill, we can also do a handoff at that point as well. So I mean,
first birthday is just to.
It's just to
randomize
weed
it?
out the 17 and younger.
Oh, okay. The way I was reading, you'd call me and ask for the person that's over 18 that just had a birthday. That's not how it is. Am I reading it wrong?
Oh, yeah. In that first intro, that is to kind of randomize who they're speaking to. We can take that part out, though.
I was just curious if there was
that's to randomize who we're speaking to. The majority of phone calls that we land are going to be cell phones, so we'll just ask the cell phone owner. We won't ask them to pass their cell phone over.
So
Any other questions on the demo or the screening and demographics? I can make a note of that part right there. Okay, we'll keep going. Okay, this is our first opinions check. So this one is to sort of level set the playing field, so we don't immediately ask about the water district, but we ask about some other orgs and agencies that they might be as familiar or more familiar with. We'll ask them to rate their opinion from favorable to unfavorable for these 5, and then I'll pause here, but the next opinion check is about the water district specifically. So these are sort of the well-known or, additional orgs that we wanted to ask them about. So do we have any? Yeah, go for it.
I was just, when I read the list, I kind of thought one that everybody probably has a business interface with is Cox Cable.
Oh, that's a good one.
Sort of to nominate that potentially. It's a great control question because if
Yes.
everybody has extremely favorable opinions, then something's.
Something's wrong. Okay, great. Oh.
yeah, and in this list, if you look at which one of these don't belong, it does seem like one of them doesn't belong, and so we can replace the fire district with Cox.
That was my thought too, that
Yeah.
not many people will, even though they know they're there, they don't know much.
School district comes to mind too.
That's a
Different
much
animal.
more controversial
Yeah.
agency. I think we would probably get some varying opinions on
Really?
that, so.
The goal here is not to have them rail against these agencies or orgs or to really even promote conversation. This is really 1 to 5, how much do you like it? And then we'll compare that to the subsequent feedback for the separate water district questions. Okay. So as I mentioned, we say, as you may know, then we're finally telling them who their water district is. Then we ask how satisfied they are. And then we also ask how satisfied they are, or we're planning to ask how satisfied they are with each of these 6 areas of service. So we have reliable water, high quality tap, good tasting tap, reasonable rates, dependable long-term, and customer questions and responses to those. Okay. I'll keep going. All right. Now we're finally doing our first mention and check of the advanced purification project, gauging if they've even heard of it. I'll talk about our interviews that we all had next, but as many of you mentioned when I spoke with you, a lot of people don't even know this project is around. And so if they're not aware of CAP, they will not be asked those 2 subsequent questions. But if they do indicate yes, a great deal, or yes, a little, then they will be asked those 2 follow-up questions. So sort of in your own words, what do you recall seeing, hearing, or reading about CAP? And then this is the first of several support opposition checks. So without any information provided, this is the first time we check in with anybody who's heard of it if they support or oppose. Okay. So after we do that initial check of support or oppose, then we provide a full project description. This will be read to all respondents regardless of their answer to have you heard or read anything about about CAP. So then we go into more detail about what the project is, and then again, after we provide some of the facts, we ask oppose or support again. And we're gonna you'll see that question pop up a lot. We're gonna keep comparing it as we throw new information at them.
A quarter of our area's water needs, is that accurate?
It's a quarter of our demand in our service area.
From the district?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I read that as like, that's covering the entirety use of the valley or, our area, which.
Yeah, we can clarify.
Yeah, I can clarify.
Water districts. I also thought that, it says that it's going to purify or treat water. It doesn't say sewage, or it doesn't say, I mean, that's probably one of the more divisive characteristics of the project, is where that water that we're treating is coming from. So I don't know if there's a way to define that eloquently or not.
Yeah, we can say, we have said we'll treat CSD, sanitary treatment plant, effluent, something like that.
Yeah, it's a little artful effort there.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. That's a good point, though. Any other comments on this one? All right. So again, post description, how strongly do you support or oppose? And then this is kind of the first time we're asking them to explain that after they have a bit of information. So this is an open-ended question. And then prompt for specific just means they will ask follow-ups if they do not elaborate. Okay, next slide. This is when we list potential benefits, and for each of these, they will be asked to rank from extremely important to not too important. So we have local control, reliability over time, reducing that reliance on imported water, improving drought preparedness, natural disaster preparedness, providing water that exceeds bottled water standards, recovering quickly from natural disasters, and improving drinking water quality. So we'll do a gut check there.
I just had a comment that, I'll go back one, just, sorry.
Yeah.
Improving preparedness for droughts. I felt like I wanted to see something like, improving or increasing our water supply during droughts, or,
Yeah, we could say improving water security. Sometimes people don't know what that means, so we like
Yeah.
to kind of put it in the context of a drought,
increasing our water supply we
reliability.
needed for a drought.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's the preparedness.
It's a preparedness?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can use drought resiliency, that's another way
Yeah.
to put it. Yeah.
Perfect.
More is better.
Improving drinking water quality. I don't know that I like the idea that our water quality needs improvement and that this project would do it. I don't know that that's.
Yep, we can
maybe an
take that up.
interesting discussion point.
All right.
It does improve baseline quality of water going into the groundwater basin. I think there's probably a chain between drinking water and, the influence of CAP, but again,
It's not as,
you might get into an area you don't want to get into.
Right,
yeah.
You want to charge the private
Like our
pumpers?
water's already of high quality, like we're
Right,
not.
but the private pumpers need to pay more because they get better quality? No,
Yeah,
I
I
know
just
your
think-
monologue
yeah,
left
see, that's the
out.
whole thing. It's one of those things that you might get into an area that, well, what's wrong with the water quality? And whatever.
Sure.
And then I
Okay.
think the recovering quickly from disaster, something like that. Mm-hmm. I guess it'd be interesting what angle, how is that gonna help us recover more quickly from,
I've read that as
A
like an
debris
earthquake
flow.
severing the
Earthquakes, yeah.
Yeah.
that would just help us have,
But that was it.
Well, it helps us because we have a local supply that's sustainable and we can.
If State Water Project goes offline or has a catastrophe,
Or even the South Coast Conduit, either
Yeah,
one of
that'd
them
be-
goes
Yeah.
out, then
Right.
at least we have enough water locally for,
I was saving this comment for a subsequent slide, but I see the word imported water shows up on this one. And I think we need to clarify what imported water is. Because if I knew nothing and I thought, imported water, bringing it from China, or isn't there gonna be a tariff on that?
yeah, we can say like
So,
state
imported
water.
from Northern California.
Yeah, we can say state
Yeah,
water.
something that, through a pipeline or.
State Water Project water. Okay, that's good feedback. Okay, then again, after you've heard those benefits, support, oppose. This next slide, it's a lot of text, but I'll walk you through it. So this one is where we're going to start doing sort of our A/B testing or our ABCDEFG testing on possible messaging and seeing how strongly those resonate. So these will be read, and then they will be asked, or respondents will be asked to rank from convincing to not convincing. So we have around groundwater, it explains that the drought is more reliable on makes everybody more reliable on groundwater. It takes years to recharge. And then it mentions how CAP helps fill the basins and provide reliable water regardless of those drought conditions. Self-reliance, we talked about this a little already. I'm just scanning to see if it says imported water, and it does. So we have having locally produced and locally controlled water within the community. Wanted to test, this is something I heard especially from when I spoke to the sanitation district, they really think the fact that this technology has been adopted by large agencies, small agencies, rich agencies, not so rich agencies, and so we wanted to test that messaging with them as well. That this is not new technology and has been in place for many places for 20 years or more. Also, testing that disaster preparedness messaging, and this kind of goes into a little bit more of what we talked about, but diversifying that water supply so that you're not so heavily reliant on that state water project. Talking about future, we are very careful not to talk about, because this isn't what the project's about, but it's not about growth or, wanting to turn Carpinteria into LA, for instance, but this is about the long-term sustainability of your community for multi-generations. We wanted to talk about monitoring and how this really gets into the safety aspect, sort of that ick factor that we've talked about. This really does dive in a little bit more to sort of that source water and purification of that. And then for this one, for cost finally, is, the fluctuations in state water projects or from other sources of water. And this is a more predictable cost. So those will be the messages we will be testing.
For the self-reliance, I think it's been around, for the adoption, it's been around for 20 years. And for the monitoring, they just announced it after 10 years of planning. So has it been around 10 years, 20 years? Is it brand new that they just announced it after 10 years of testing? Is it?
I think maybe what you're referring to, the new one, is direct potable reuse. This is recharge. It's indirect potable reuse. So they just sort of approved treatment to tap.
Sure. So F doesn't clarify the difference, I guess.
Yeah, I
California
think-
drinking water standards among the strictest in the
Okay.
nation.
Yeah,
with
we'll,
state standards for
we'll
use
take
of
that out because
Yeah.
that refers to DPR and it's not
Yeah.
applicable here.
Yeah, I'll make a note. Okay, good point. Any other comments on that? Okay. Then again, after you've heard those statements, oh, yeah.
I wasn't sure if you, so on cost, maybe it's just me, y'all tell me if I'm wrong. Our current water sources are becoming increasingly unreliable. Well, I would think that their comment would be, in what way? So are we prepared to say, our groundwater is depleted, our state water is unreliable, our, Lake Kachuma got down as low as 7%?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that that's touched on in the project description, and we can sort of beef that up a little bit.
And then the import water, just make sure it's import from Northern California.
Yeah, I made a note of that. And again, just like an overall comment, the survey is not intended for education. We're not trying to convince these specific folks. We want to see what their questions are, essentially, or what their concerns are. So if they do have questions like, why is it increasingly unreliable, the surveyor will make a note of that, and that's definitely something that we can take in and communicate. Anything else on these statements? Okay. Okay, so after the supportive statements, again, we'll do support, oppose. And then this next slide, we're testing opposition statements. And this is always my least popular slide. And so I want to just preface this by saying the statements and the intro is not, they will make it clear that these are not factual statements, but we want to know, at least I want to know as a communicator, what they find convincing from the opposition or from the misinformation side. Because if they don't find like noise being a big concern, then I'm not going to spend a lot of resources trying to debunk that. But if they are concerned about the ick factor, that recycled water factor, obviously you want to put more weight and time and communication into that. So we're testing 3 areas that we have seen, not just here, but in our other reuse projects. We have seen sort of the opposition or the misinformation campaigns use these 3 talking points. So noise, the construction noise, and the disruption to local business. So we want to see how big of a concern that is for that short-term, those short-term challenges. Then we also have, we want to test, and we can change this number Bob that 25%, but we want to test sort of their threshold, and I think I talked to you about this threshold of what number scares them about their water bill, what that increase concern will be. We know that rates is a concern in all communities that do this, and so we want to see, sort of gauge how much of a concern and how convincing that is. And then finally, as I mentioned, that recycled water, hitting on some of the buzzwords and high concern items, over-the-counter drugs, additives, just body stuff. And so this is where we can dive into that recycled water and see about their concern there.
I have a suggestion. I would just flip that first one on noise, where it says this project will create noise. I would say, start that sentence with during construction, this project.
That's a good one.
I've got a couple. The rates, yeah, I mean, the 25% is
Yeah.
optimistic. And then on the recycled water, I mean, it's got a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, it's everything that goes in the sewer, right? Not just through the human body. Or you're like, oh, it's just through the human, but it's everything that goes in a sewer, which I think is what people interpret as being dirtier than what goes through the human body sometimes. And I guess we can only come up with 3 things. We've got 7 for pros and 3 cons. That's all we can come up with.
I had more. I had more. Some are not really applicable for smaller communities. And others, they kind of walk the line between true and false. And so just trying to walk that line so we're not putting the program in a bad spot.
Sure. I guess like my kind of consistent
Yeah.
challenge has been that I'm always being sold on this. And this just seems like another kind of sales pitch on it. Not saying it's good or bad or one
Yeah.
or the other, but you know, it's a lot of convincing, or it's a lot of questions geared towards the pros. You know, they're all pretty lengthy questions. They all kind of go into in-depth stuff, and the cons are the water's dirty, it's expensive, and it's going to be loud for a year. And so, yeah, I just don't know if there's a way to, you know, expand on those, or if there's not. Maybe there's not. I mean, you guys are the pros. But I think the rates are going to be the biggest hurdle to overcome.
so,
So I
too.
think some clarity or some more accurate numbers, you know, as much as 25% sounds great, but, you know, up to, or, you know, in exceedance of whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, now we have maybe better numbers by the time this hits the streets.
Yeah.
kinda like that.
No, that's a fair point, and I can go back and look at some of those opposition statements that we cut out and see about adding some of those back in, just to make it a
Sure,
little
yeah,
more
I mean, whatever
balanced.
makes sense, but
Yeah.
just an observation.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the 25% comes from current revenues are 16 million. We need 4 million to pay for debt and operate, so it's 25%. In terms of rates, it's probably going to look a little bit more like 33 or 34%, so it's in that range.
I think we mentioned maybe changing it to 40, but we can,
Too high.
yeah. Well, that's what we want. We want it to be a little too high. Anything else on this one? Okay. So again, after they hear those oppositions, we gut check that support and opposition. Next slide. And then finally, it's a wrap-up, closeout questions. So these are, you can go to the next slide. These are optional, and this is really just to help us compare to the voter rolls, to match up their information with that background information they provide when they register to vote. So we register, or we ask their registered party, and they can also opt out of that one. And then they can also opt out of the income question as well. We wanted to include that income question again, with all of these, but especially for a couple of these, to make sure that we can stratify that data and do a comparison on who's more concerned about which issue, so we can really target that communication to the appropriate committees, or communities, sorry.
the first question, I know they're optional. I just don't know if ending with that kind of a question on are you Republican or Democrat is really necessary in this survey that's about water supply.
What would we do with the answers?
I don't know, why bother asking?
Yeah,
I'm just saying, why bother asking?
I totally agree.
yeah, well, I was,
You know what I mean?
I was agreeing with you, like, okay, once we have the answer to that question, what are we gonna do with it?
Right, right. And so even if it's optional, why dismount with, and are you Republican or a Democrat? I just don't think that's helpful.
Sure, I can tell you the reasoning behind that, but I totally respect that. So when we compare to the voter rolls, we can see which elections you voted in. And so lining that up helps us know if we are surveying someone who seems particularly engaged in their community and may have influence or the gumption to oppose it. It's really just a matchup, but I totally understand what you're saying, and I can,
I don't like it.
we can take that off. And if we want, I can also move these classifications up to the intro demographic questions and then sort of end on a bigger statement
I could
question.
understand how the income would be helpful, and they can say that they don't want to respond. And if the rest of the board thinks that the first question is helpful, then I'll go along. I just don't think it is, and I'd like to take it out.
You know, these are classification questions. Could they just be moved up into the front where other demographic information is being requested?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does knowing what they're registered as help
I
you
would still
compare
take
them
that.
to the voter roll to see if they voted?
If there are multiple names, similar names, it also helps us with communities because there are communities that are within Carpinteria that are more heavily skewed one way or the other. Again, I am not tied to it. This is your survey. That's just the reasoning behind asking this in most of the surveys.
Well, what do we say? I say take it out.
They take it out.
Okay,
I agree.
Wait a minute, what do y'all say?
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay, take it out.
Perfect.
Thank you.
and then that'll be it. So I'll have them wrap it up a little bit differently.
I know.
What color car they drive, I'd like to know that, though.
So yeah, I'll have them wrap it up a little bit differently, but if you're okay with these changes, we can get this survey start deploying next month. And it'll take them about 2 weeks, they're estimating, to collect a significant sample, and then probably 2 more weeks to analyze the data. So we should have a report out to you, hopefully, if not next month, the April following month.
What's the targeted size? How many people will get?
I believe it's 800? 800.
And what's do you know what a response rate's like for something like this? Is it?
Yes, so I think they target a response rate of 7%.
Okay, any other questions, Polly?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks,
I
Amy.
think I'm next, right?
Yeah, she's here. She's got one more thing to talk about, so.
No, yeah, let's finish first, Bob, and then you get to speak. No, let's first finish up is there anything else?
No, not on this item. If there's a public comment, then we can
Yeah,
move
so
to that.
he asked for a public comment on this item, so go ahead.
I just have some, I was looking at this survey that I downloaded and on the project survey, and some of these questions are, well, I have some questions about these questions. And really quickly, the first question is, in what year were you born? Next, with which racial or ethnic group do you identify yourself? 3, what was the last level of school you completed? 4, it comes down to who pays the bill in your household. Go to the last page. They want to know what political party you're registered for. Then they want to know your complete household income. This is intrusive and irrelevant, I think, to a water survey. These questions should not be here. And I think they need to be deleted or at least put decline to answer. I think these questions are way out of line. They should not be on this survey.
These are anonymous.
Pardon me?
These will be anonymous, so the surveyor's name and identifying information.
I realize that, but still, I think you're just getting into way too much of, into people's personal lives. And that's just my opinion, so I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
No, we want to hear from you, but I think the board went through all the questions, and I think we made some changes. And we also have to respect our surveyor on doing her job, so.
Oh, of course.
It seems to me that the changes we made were appropriate, but I think we're all trying to do the best job possible, so.
Okay, well, they should know then too that actually the survey, in my opinion, is way too complicated and bulky. It needs to be cut down to about 5 minutes. You're not going to get people to go through all this. This is almost impossible. It's not going to work. But we're paying for it, I guess. I hope we get what we pay for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is for action, and the reason why it's for action is we want direction from the board to move forward with these questions and move forward with the polling. So a motion might be move forward with the polling with the questions, with changes to the questions as discussed.
So moved.
Polly seconds.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director O'Connor,
Aye.
Director Holcomb,
Yes.
Director Balch,
Aye.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, Amy. We're done with-
Well, next item.
I'm staying up here.
All right, so we're not going to argue with you. Consider report on CAP listening sessions with the Carpinteria Valley Water District and the Carpinteria Sanitation District Boards for information. Bob?
Yeah, so you will all recall, maybe not Patrick, but the rest of you will recall that there were listening sessions conducted. There were also listening sessions conducted with the sanitary district, and Amy's here to report out on the findings of those listening sessions.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, sorry, Director O'Connor, I missed you. I held listening sessions with 4 of the directors and all of the directors at the sanitation district as well. As you recall, I was just kind of asking general questions about what you know about the project, what the main community concerns are, and what potential outlets and different communications methods we could do. So I'm just here to present some themes. No action needed, but we'll just go ahead and get started. So the big takeaway themes, cost and financial transparency and concerns was top of mind and top of list across both boards. Clear cost breakdowns is something that was requested and that I know is a priority for the water district. And then, just the overall fear of increase of rates. And then sort of the kind of themes or overarching concerns of, or what the boards perceived as those concerns. One was that, minimal pushback so far because not a lot of information or not a lot of informed community members, but there is some of that toilet to tap concern. And so speaking about that water treatment, not so much anymore, but last year we were in a non-drought cycle, and so reminding people, I think as one of you mentioned earlier, that the lake was almost empty, and reminding people that drought is inevitable again, given the climate cycles. And then finally, sort of speaking to that overall engagement, it's low, and so making sure that the public is informed and engaged as much as possible, especially before those critical, RFP points or those voting points or things like that that could trip up the program. Continuing on with some key themes. Addressing potential performance and trust issues, and this is where that, this was really a big point from the sanitation board, really pushing that this isn't a new program, giving real examples that are in use today, emphasizing that technology and really separating that it's not toilet to tap, it's toilet to recharge. And so separating and really defining how long that recharge is, everything that's filtered out naturally in the recharge, in addition to that previous, the treatment. And then another big selling point for the sanitation district was not only the staffing, like being able to recruit, but on the flip side, not having those people here. And so really getting people trained who are already doing the work, or pushing for locals outside of the areas, really just capitalizing, or not capitalizing, but honing in on the job creation, and then sort of focusing on training or building up CARP folks to fill those roles. I asked both boards about how they see their roles in not only communicating, but just sort of overall support. Sanitary District really sees itself as a background player and to support you all, and sort of just be a +1 for you. And then obviously the Water District, just being their name will be on the bill, and sort of the default face of it, we'll definitely need to engage board and staff and leadership a little bit more. And then really when the two groups are combined, really showing that, close collaboration and sort of the same goals in mind. And feel free to jump in and stop me at any time. So based on all of our conversations, these are my initial goals for communication. Prioritize that cost messaging. I think we've hit that a lot, and we're getting closer and closer to be able to, give those more firm numbers, as Rob mentioned. Highlight that safety and proven success, and then maintaining ongoing updates. And so we want to make sure that the community doesn't see this as a sales pitch, a one-time communication. We want to keep them updated throughout the project, but even after project launch. So setting Bob and his team up with the plan to keep those communications going, and the messaging that can come around that. All right, next slide. So to achieve that, our approach to stakeholder engagement is multiple channels. So I think everyone I talked to mentioned the coastal view. So that's definitely high priority. But several mentioned that that's not the end-all be-all, especially maybe for a younger generation. And so we're definitely looking at non-traditional media, social media, and sort of a broader view of media relations, and just diversifying our outreach, and in person as well. We'll also be doing Spanish language outreach when and where appropriate. And then these were some of the in-person engagement opportunities that were mentioned: festival booths, community events, local clubs, and service organizations. Both districts wanted to make sure the public knows who's doing what and who's not doing what. And so making that a little clearer on who owns what portions of it, and sort of that division of labor there, so that if there are concerns or questions, they are addressed by the appropriate agency. And then I just really like this quote, or this sentiment that someone mentioned, sort of relying on there's no new water on the planet. And so really kind of leaning on that to help with the ick factor and really show the collaboration between the SAN and the Water District. And then just general community outreach, again, expanding and impressing upon people those proven success stories. And just overall, our approach to communication is show more than tell. And so using graphics and maps and images and illustrations as much as possible so that while we won't shirk or ignore the technical side, we really want it to be digestible and understandable to people from, Spanish speakers to, English speakers, all education levels, all interest levels. And so just sort of walking that line of being technical but not too technical. And then outside of community engagement, we also want to prioritize board member engagement. Next slide. So we have sort of committed to and have already, talked to Bob about getting those consistent, regular updates to you and to the sanitation board, providing you all some talking points and sort of fact sheets or data sheets that you can either refer to or take with you when you're out and about in the community. Showing that one team approach between the sanitation district and the water district to show that they're working together, again, towards this common goal. And then really helping to facilitate the directors from both agencies to make sure that both groups feel supported and they feel the support from the other group as well. And then promoting transparency. Obviously, these public presentations are one way to do that, but also, asking for community feedback and receiving that and giving you all, again, those facts to respond to that. And then also supporting you all. This will be part of our plan, providing you all support if you need it, if you go to speak at a local event and you want a presentation or fact sheet or talking points or things like that. So just making sure that, like the staff, you feel empowered and you feel confident in talking about it. Okay, so key recommendations. We've talked about most of these, but so increase cost transparency, really breaking it down in relatable terms. And one thing that was mentioned that could be successful is comparing that long-term cap cost versus that long-term imported water cost, just as an example. Focusing on that water quality and safety, in addition to showing those success stories, really emphasizing that multi-step purification, not just at the plant, but in the ground. So the natural and the sort of man-made purification. And then really overall, just enhancing public awareness as construction starts or as changes start happening on bills. We don't want anyone to be surprised, or some people are going to be surprised because they won't pay attention to anything, but we want most people to not be surprised and to know what to expect, really to minimize the calls to the water district or the complaints at your board meetings or things like that, especially about things that we can explain better outside of those forums. Yeah.
I think on the first one, we have often compared the cap costs to the desal.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think I had that on another slide, but yes, that was another one that was mentioned. Yes. No, that's perfect. Okay, next slide. We're working on coordinating outreach, obviously. So that joint messaging I talked about, potential joint or even separate open houses or tours or those community events that I mentioned. So just making sure that all of those line up with project milestones or developments or those community touch points. And then address workforce and technical needs. Again, as I mentioned, this was really out of the sanitation or the sanitary district, highlighting the opportunities for locals in some, pretty stable, high-paying jobs. And then really just to maintain those updates on staffing, on the funding, on the grants, sort of to to show how the program is really working to reduce the rate burdens on the community as well. So again, thanks all for talking to me and for listening to me ramble for 2 presentations in a row. My next steps are sort of our group's next steps, WSC and Bob and everyone, to finalize that outreach plan, to prepare those coordinated messaging. We're already pretty far, as Rob mentioned, on several of those, and you'll likely be seeing those within the next couple weeks to review, and then also really intentionally expanding that engagement. So I know Bob has done a great job with the Coastal View articles, but I think, we all think now is the time to really step that up and expand it to reach as many people as possible. Yep.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I would like to try to find time to
That would be
engage
great.
for whatever reason we missed. And in the absence of that, I do want to make a comment. I'm not sure if it applies to what you're doing or otherwise, but it seems like there's a missing constituency that could help in this process, and that's the Board of Supervisors, Santa Barbara County. Certainly a very active body, definitely gets a lot of attention and press, and I would assume there's some relationship between the special districts and the Board of Supervisors. So we have a pretty supportive, Commissioner and Roy Lee, who's, in Santa Barbara, or in Carpinteria, and we got to leverage that, I guess is my point.
I think that's a really good point.
That's a good point.
Any other questions? Yep.
I would just,
Sorry.
oh,
Go ahead.
oh, okay, I didn't,
Go ahead. Go for it.
I would just add,
Go for it,
we
man.
talk about the Monterey and Anaheim successes, and it might be useful also to have a list populated of those who are planning
Yeah.
to do this as well. It's a bigger crowd.
I mean, there's already agencies planning for direct potable, so
Yeah, and we have
get a good list.
we're part of Water Reuse, and Water Reuse puts out a map, updates a map with existing projects and planned projects, so we can show the whole state
Yeah.
and all.
Yeah, and I think that could be compelling to someone who's wondering what's going on. It's like, well, look at all these other agencies that are doing this, and we're doing it too.
Yep.
Yeah, sort of that don't be left out sentiment. Got to get in now.
We're not pioneering anything here.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Casey?
Yeah, and I think to Polly's point, there's some additional opportunities with desal. We kind of missed the boat back in the 90s, and the city did too, and then they brought it back online. It was significantly more expensive, and this project's kind of been kicked around for a long time now. And there's some risk with not doing it, and the costs going through the roof. And then I would check the pricing on that and see, before we say it's cheaper than that, maybe just make sure, because you can find that pretty easily. But I think it's a good local other way to see,
Yes.
that's another local source. I hear Monterey and Anaheim, I'm like, well, good for them. What's it going to
Sure,
do
sure,
for
sure.
me? So just
But
another
what's happening
option.
next door? Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think we have looked into that, and it's more expensive.
Anybody else here? Actually, the question was, so there's going to be direct potable use of purified water in California that's going to get approved?
Well, they're trying.
Yeah, the policy has been in development for
Yeah.
DPR.
Several agencies have sort of been champing at the bit to get it moving, but I don't think any have been formally approved yet, but they've paved the way for direct potable reuse.
Yeah, I understand they're making beer in Texas out of direct potables, so we should be able to do the same thing over here. So.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really fit our community. We have a groundwater basin. It makes sense to put it in the groundwater basin.
Yep.
Monitoring is a lot, simpler for indirect potable reuse project. And it really doesn't cost any more to put it into the ground and pull it out.
Yeah, I think people that you talk to, that the direct potable is a bigger stretch than putting in the groundwater and getting back
Yeah.
out. So I think we're good.
Just for your background, I've had direct potable beer, and it's not good. There's not enough minerals in it. It's too clean. It's too
yeah,
clean.
I heard they had to add those to it, right? Yeah.
Yep,
so-
too clean.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Then we go on to item number 8D, consider S&P credit rating review for information, Bob.
Yeah, so I wanted to put this on here. I was surprised actually how quickly this went. So we were last rated by the S&P rating agency in 2020 as we were preparing to issue our 2020 bonds to refund our 2010 capital appreciation bonds. And at that time, the rating was AA minus. And, it was probably the first rating that we had in many years. So we were happy to get an AA minus. They do periodic reviews of the agencies that have, issuances that have been rated previously. And we're not sure if that's what this was, but they contacted us on February 3rd. It could have been because we entered into a SRF agreement with the state, and that's posted on what's called EMMA, which all rating agencies see. And they saw, wow, Carpinteria's entered into an agreement to take a $42 million loan that may affect their rating. They didn't indicate one way or another whether that was the reason or the driver, but they did contact us and request a review. And so we met with them on February 3rd. So actually, I'm sorry. We met with them on February 3rd. So I think they contacted us in January, actually. Discussed several things. Water sales outlook was one of the things that they were interested in because the water sales have been dropping. In 2020, they were closer to over 4,000 acre feet per year, and now they're between 36 and 38. They noticed again the CAP project, loan, and so they were interested in that. And then they were looking to get an update on the project status. And so we went through all of those items. We talked about our capital plan for the next 10 years. We talked about our projected revenues and rate increases for the next 10 years. We talked about the potential debt that we would be entering into over the next 10 years. And so they were happy, and pretty quickly on February 13th, they turned around and reissued the AA minus. So we're happy about that. And I just wanted to let you know, and the actual S&P published report is in your packet. So,
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What was our worst rating in your memory for either of you, and what was our best rating?
I don't know if we had a.
Hovered around AA minus?
Yeah, I don't know if they started doing ratings before, 2020. To
So
be
we don't
honest.
really have anything. Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Do you remember?
AA minus. Yeah.
I can look back though to confirm.
I'm just curious. Okay.
All right, thank you. Then we go on to item number 9, the director's report. 9A, COMB regular meeting, January 27, 2025. Polly?
I'm just going to go through the whole thing. Also, I took a bad fall on Sunday, so if I slur my words or speak a foreign language, call 911. The January 27th meeting, pleased to say that Patrick came in person to introduce himself as my alternate, and Galita's alternate called in. So that was great to see that. We had a public comment from a gentleman interested in COMB's sedimentation issues with the lake, especially since the fires in LA. We had a second quarter review done by Edward, our financial controller. All monies collected from FEMA for 2023 storm repairs are in, minus some minor administrative expenses, around $19,000. The financials are on track. We sent out an RFP for a new 3-year contract for our independent financial auditor. It went to 8 CPA firms, and this again was for a new 3-year contract, and I'll report on that in just a minute. In the GM report, the IT team had a review with Turenshock, which is our security services company, and this was to review cybersecurity issues, help with their network server setup, firewalls, antiviruses. I think I reported earlier that Turnshock frequently sends out phishing expeditions to the staff to make sure that they're not going to click them on in emails, and I think that's always a good thing. To make sure that they're not open. They go over disaster recovery responses. And also, one of the things that's being discussed is where could we take COMB off-site if the COMB campus would burn, similar to, again, what happened in LA. Let's see, staff is in the budget planning stages for our new budget, and we are working with the member MU's technical team on new IIP events. Bob, I don't know if you have anything new on that. I know this is the time of year where we get very closely with the engineering team. On the engineering side, at least at the time, before our last rain, the rainfall was 16% of normal. It was considered, so far at that time, a very dry year, with only 3 other drier years in the last 125 years. Again, Joel said still 2 more months to go, and hopefully heavier rains will come in the final 2 months. Since that time, I'll report recently that we did get a half a foot. It's not a lot. The runoffs have really not happened at all, but it's good enough to give us a little break from the fire season that we have been in. There's another storm or 2 coming in the next week, so we'll be monitoring that. Let's see. If the lake goes down to 730 feet, as we know, then we would be forced to put in the Hilton Creek pump barge, but that still has not been fixed by the Bureau, and it's on their list to repair it. Let's see. In late December, I reported that there had been a inspection of the Sheffield Tunnel pipeline, which failed because the communication devices did not work. It was rescheduled for last month and again did not work. So the Bureau is ordering special equipment from Colorado, which has worked in inspections here in the past. The reason for this is that, as most of you know, Sheffield Tunnel is the main water line between Cater and Carpinteria and Montecito. And Flowers last did its inspection in 2012, but it did not do it in 2018. The pipe is over 6,000 feet long with 502 braces that we are not sure to what degree they are corroded. So the idea is to regroup and do the inspection with communications devices that make it safe for the teams to go in to get a better idea of what those 502 braces look like, what status they're in, and possibly with a longer-term fix of needing some kind of a bypass around the pipe, depending on the seriousness of the repairs. So this has been named as a high priority. It's an important fix and a critical water supply route for Carp and Montecito. Hopefully we'll have better news next month. On the elevator side, let's see, Otis will not allow us to go to the 3rd floor. We're allowed to go to the first floor and the 2nd floor, but we're not allowed to go to the 3rd floor, which is just below the 2nd floor, because it's too dangerous. So we have to walk down a ladder and then go back up. They're in the process, $58,000 to take a look at those fixes. So the elevator works. It's just that they don't want us going down to the 3rd floor. Also, at the time, we were getting Bureau approval to put in the emergency escape door into the north portal, which has been approved. On the op side, they exercised all the valves. Sheffield, Laurel, Cater, Ortega took about a week to do all of it. Used some epoxy coating in some areas. Did security fencing around our storage area on the COMB campus. On the fish side, they were in the middle of red snorkel surveys, trying to finish up the annual monitoring summary, which I'll have more on in just a second. No reds in Upper Hilton Creek, which I'll report on as well. On the oak tree side, they watered the year 13 trees and are in the middle of inventory with 2 more months to go on that. On the water supply, the losses that were estimated at 3 to 4% the month before are down to 1%, so there's an improvement there. I'll move on to the admin committee meeting, which was pretty straightforward. We did select Bartlett Pringle for another 3-year term. There were 5 responses to our RFP, and the reason for the selection was that Edward felt that only Bartlett Pringle estimated the high number of hours that are needed to do that kind of audit with us, where the other firms were much lower, and that made him nervous, that there's enough complications going on within COMB right now and also within GASB. He preferred to have that those extra hours, and thought that Bartlett Pringle did a good job in responding to that. Their pricing was reasonable over the next 3 years. However, he did recommend changing out both partner and CPA with a new contract, and so our new partner will be Tracy Solomon, who we have here. The admin committee recommended to send that to the board, recommending approval. The next issue was the change in director compensation. We do it here from time to time. It was a 5% raise. In order to discuss this, though, it has to be publicly notified. So we approved staff sending it to the board with the permission to publicly notify the public in various local press in order to discuss it at the next March meeting. The March meeting was supposed to be the fourth week in March, but it's going to be March 31st because 2 directors had spring break conflicts. At the February 19th operations meeting, we got more information on the Sheffield pipeline, a lot of which I have just gone over, to approve Phase 1 and Phase 2 not to exceed $120,000. We will be working with Flowers again, who did the inspection in 2012. Let's see. Again, 502 joints to assess the level of damage. No leaks at this time. That's actually good news. So at least the good news is that there are no leaks at this time. We just don't know what condition the joints or the pipe is in. I thought it was kind of interesting. This pipe is 6 feet, and they found in the files a memo by the first COMB general manager to the Bureau saying, please never, ever, ever give us a pipe that is 6 feet. This is too small. And so all the pipes going forward were larger than 6. They're about, 7 to 8, I think, something like that, right? Anyway, so we thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see. And then on the other, the other IIP, our shutoff down here has been put on hold because we're not allowed to shut off during fire season. So we're using those funds for the Hilton Creek design project, and I'll get to that in just a second. The Bureau of Reclamation improved our safety door, so that was good. And went through the laterals down here. We do have issues with 3 of the valves out on the dam. There's a 10-inch valve that sits in between 2 30-inch valves. 2 30-inch valves were the ones that we purchased about a few years back for $1.2 million because the Bureau forgot to include it in their budget. And the 10-inch is partially open and the 2 30-inch are partially open, and Joel is working around the clock with the Bureau trying to figure out a fix to all of those. The problem is that they are, all of our contacts have been promoted, and their rest of their staff has not been backfilled, so we're seeing a little bit of the slowdown on the Bureau front. Likewise, we've had to get normally we would work with the Bureau on some cultural sensitivity consulting for some of these projects, but we couldn't wait on them. We have to keep these things moving and these fixes from the 2024 storms. So we hired a consultant with the Bureau's blessing, which is in writing. In other words, if you guys can't do it, what's the criteria for us going outside to do it? And they gave us permission to do that, and so we're moving forward accordingly. A piece of good news, the water quality on the lake is absolutely excellent. but we want to take a look at some of the ash by where the lake fire is. We need a boat to do that. But all in all, the quality is still incredibly favorable. Okay, so Ortega Reservoir still has leaks and still has issues with tow drains. And so there is a dive planned for March with a typical die. And for this reason, we're keeping the reservoir down from 8 to 9 feet as from the 15-foot normal level. Do you have anything else to add on that? I mean, I can't believe we're still doing this.
Yeah, so last time we repaired it was in 2023. And it was a dive and then an attempt to repair it during the testing and diving. Then it was drained. We injected sealant into the areas we thought indicated leaks during the dive. It did cut back the tow drain leakage by a significant amount. We refilled it back up, have been operating it at 10 feet, since then. But the tow drain has been ticking up in the last several months, and during the Denver inspection, the Bureau indicated that they wanted to see another dive and potentially try to plug some of the leaks that are occurring. So,
Okay. Anyway, risk and resiliency, Joel gave us just kind of a briefing, kind of this time of year, updating their risk and resiliency and always coordinating with the MUs on how that works, and we trade information back and forth. So that's moving forward accordingly. And then with the COMB recent board meeting on Monday, we approved the new 3-year contract with Bartlett Pringle. We approved the publishing of the proposed director compensation in the local press for March. We approved what had come to the operations team, the Phase 1 and Phase 2, working with Flowers for the Sheffield tunnel pipe, not to exceed $120,000. Items 8 and 9 took the longest. So in the first one was approving the Hilton Creek new project, not necessarily the project, but going after the grant and approving the 60% design. So here's what happened. Back in December, this came to us, and I reported out on it here, that this is common that the fish division would go after grants to try and improve fish passageway, fish development. And the initial quote from HDR for 60% of the design was for $50,000. At the same time, we were sending it to the Bureau for approval. And since that time, the Bureau came back not with an approval, not with a rejection, but rather, we do not oppose this. However, you will be responsible for all of the maintenance and the fixes that you are doing to Hilton Creek. And so we took that to legal because that's certainly a big change. And Bill did not think that it really was an issue. He said we have just as higher, liability with the different crossings that we've done. So he just didn't see this as a big issue. But the other change was that HDR went back and scrubbed their quote after an outside agency came back and did some aerial topography and came back and said, okay, the new price is $90,000 for, again, the 60% design. And they were going to get the additional funds from the project that was proposed down here, Bob, for the shutoff, since this is put on hold because of fire season. In any event, so it raised some questions. Now, again, as I said before in December, if there's no grant awarded, and this is from CDFW, then there is no project. But it precipitated a longer discussion just to make sure we all knew what the parameters were and that this does not open itself up to mission creep, scope creep, all understanding that, yes, we want the fish to be able to get up to the upper reach of Hilton Creek, and they can't right now. Yes, this means that this is a fish barrier, and yes, this project could help us with the current buy-up and the future buy-up. So after a lot of going back and forth, my idea was, okay, again, no grant money, no project, but more importantly, if the grant comes in would be roughly, it's a $1.4 million project, and the grant money would cover $1.3 million, providing the terms and conditions are acceptable. Only then would we go forward. However, what I suggested is that this project, if it does go through all those hoops, would be subjected to really, really strenuous, typical project management, constant discussion. And if there's any change, any scope creep, then that would come back to the board. So with that in mind, I guess I was the most against it, but I okayed it based on that. Let's see. And then, so the second thing that took forever was that the annual monitoring summary did go to the Bureau in draft. And so for that reason, it's not published on our website until it's finalized. And so if you go to the website, all the other annual monitoring reports from previous years are listed. So this was only in draft. I guess the Fish Committees decided to do a long presentation of the annual monitoring summary, which really did take an hour, only to have one of the directors rightly say, why can't we just get a copy of the annual monitoring summary? So it's on the website after it's approved. It will be on the website for 2024. It's a good read. It goes over everything that the Fish Division does for the Bureau and every kind of data, including reading scales, which is almost looking at a little tree thing and what you can tell from that and where the fish has been. So there's a lot of work involved, a lot of data that the Bureau needs, but the summary part of it, the narrative, I always think is a very good read, and so would encourage anybody to take a look at that. And then for FEMA, we had $101,000 coming in from FEMA in 2023. Have not collected anything yet for 2024. Continue to work with them on a regular basis, but things have slowed down with Lahaina, especially the LA fires. So we haven't seen any real evidence of anything slowing with FEMA, just because a lot of the ups and downs in Washington right now, as opposed to the Bureau where we are seeing that. But Joel knows to stay on that. On the operations side, they were just busy with Ortega and Carp Reservoir and the North Portal Valve exercising. Let's see. Under the water order terms that Tim reported on, the Term 19 study plan by the Bureau is under review. Term 20, it's called kind of the catch-all, the umbrella of all plans. The Water Board has reviewed concepts from CDFW and the Bureau and has asked for more information or more detail, and they'll put out another updated version of that. Term 27 really goes back to Tim's annual monitoring summary, our fish lead that went to the Bureau, NIMS, CDFW to get feedback, and then we'll go to the Water Board. And on the Oak Tree Committee, readout, there was no irrigating because of the rain, and they're about a third of the way through the inventory. That concludes my reports.
Wow.
It's been a long month.
Breathe.
Huh?
Breathe.
It got more exciting after
And
you
drink
left,
some water.
Patrick.
Actually, I got a question for Bob. Do we need that Ortega Reservoir? It sounds like that sucker's going to blow one of these days, and we're all going to pay. So
You don't need it until you need it. It's one of those things that's very handy when you need water quickly, and it's there. It has several functions. It operates as a balancing reservoir between the two, Carpinteria Reservoir and Ortega Reservoir. But it also operates as a storage place where we can store water so that when we have high demands, like in fire situations.
So no, I think that by itself is already enough reason. But the only reason I bring it up, it sounds like we spent money. Now we're back at possibly spending more money.
Yeah, I won't go through the whole history of what happened at Ortega Reservoir, but we in 2000, I think it was 2005, in partnership with Montecito Water, redid the bottom of the reservoir in preparation for the roof that would go over Ortega Reservoir. And during the construction of that project, there were some construction defects. We litigated the contractor and the engineer, settled out of the litigation, We then realized there was conflicts between the attorney that was representing both Montecito and Carpinteria. We litigated against them. We got a settlement. And so we had a pot of money, several $1 million, $3 or $4 million. Or do you
I don't-
remember the
I don't-
total? Is it?
Do you remember? I don't
Yeah,
think so.
1.7, I think, is our
Yeah.
half. Yeah, so about three and some change. We took that money and we attempted to repair the floor using sealants. And with at that time knowing that it would probably need to be redone over and over and over. And so I think the question at that time was, do we want to take on a, $20 million repair, or do we just want to continue to repair this every few years for a couple $100,000? And that was kind of the direction we went. That's not to say we can't change direction and say, well, let's spend some money on this thing and fix it once for all, but that's where we're at.
So right now, there's no roof on the Ortega.
Oh, there's a roof there, but
There's roof, right. The only reason I'm questioning is, and again, a lot of the local nurseries reuse these metal tanks. I mean, like 100,000 gallon or bigger, and they have these really heavy-duty liners, and they last up to like 10, 20 years. So
that was one of the options we looked at. And, the problem that we kept running into was, you have to go in. Problem with those liners in this setting is they get torn because you have to clean the reservoir. So if you put a liner in, and you have to go clean over the top of it, it's likely to get torn. Then you have to replace the whole liner. So where we ended up was, let's go to the joints, let's inject a sealant into these joints and see how well it worked. And it worked well for a couple of years, and we're kind of in that cycle now where we find leaks every few years.
no, I like ever since I've been on the board, it seems like there's always some excitement at the Ortega Reservoir. So it is. I hope we got.
Even now we're operating at about half of what it was.
Well, that's
what
the
I
other thing
said. It's
that bothers
8 to
me,
9.
I mean, we can
Yeah.
only use
It's
half
eight
of it,
to nine.
so it is, anyhow, no, I'm not the expert, but it seems like, I hope we have enough insurance if the thing blows, so the people downstream are,
Yeah, I don't think it's in danger of blowing, but it is a matter of, we have a 20 million acre or 20 million gallon reservoir that we can only use half of it, and so that's not optimal.
Let me just say, so Bob, is there anything that I missed that you want to comment on at all?
In terms of comb,
Yeah.
no, we are coordinating with them on the vulnerability assessment review, and so.
Okay.
okay, thank you, Polly, and then we got, 9E, the CCWA regular meeting, January 23rd, 2025, and that's Casey.
All right, coming out of closed section, Mr. Stokes is retiring, so the board directed staff to start the recruitment process for replacement. Let's see, the biggest kind of item of interest, subsidence was discussed kind of at length, what that's looking like. They've kind of identified kind of the long-term problems with that. So subsidence is the aqueduct slipping down, kind of settling out. So they're looking at reductions as high as 46% in some areas of the conveyance. So that obviously has a major impact on the capacity of it. Reestablishing those capacities is, as you can imagine, very, very expensive. They're talking billions of dollars over 2 decades or more. It's very prominent through the western side of the San Joaquin Valley. So they're looking at drops as low as 500 CFS. In the interim, they've done 27 miles of liner raises where they essentially just build the liner back up. And they're exploring removing some gates. And this is shared across the federal and state governments and all the state contractors. The San Luis Canal goal is to return the freeboard to its original design, so that's the main feeder for us. And so that goal is to return it back to its original design. Let's see, the next item, golden mussels were identified in North America for the first time. Those popped up in the Port of Stockton in October of 2024, likely due to international shipping. It has so far been identified in 3 state water project facilities. So they are allegedly the most invasive species globally, similar to like quagga and zebra that we've probably all heard of, but they're coming. So the biofouling of infrastructure is the biggest problem. A response task force was created. CDFW listed as restricted species, which allows for boating inspections and that stuff so that hopefully the transfer is slowed. SWP is working on applying mollucides like copper chlorine or Zequinox to treat the affected areas that already have it, but I imagine that will become kind of more and more point of interest for this project. And that's about it. Yeah. Sounds like early next year. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Casey. Then we go on to item number 10, General Manager's Report. Bob?
I'll let Norma give the financials.
Okay, so water sales budget to actual for December. Halfway through the year, our overall sales are 48 acre feet below budgeted projections. M&I specifically is 57 acre feet, and ag is actually 9 feet above projections. On the revenue side, through December, we're at right on track with the budget. It's actually 50.2%. And overall revenue, including operating and non-operating, is at 52%, so just above the 50% mark. And overall expenditures are under at 46% through December.
Any questions? Okay. Move, if you'd like, I can move through the rest of these reports. Engineering report, nothing to report unless you have some questions about the report in your packet. We did actually get an indication from the Polo Villas that they're ready to start installing meters, which will mean we're going to get some capital cost recovery revenue, estimated at, I think, $350,000. So that's about half of the meters that they're going to install.
The number in the report is that 450, is that the total or is that the half?
That's more than the half. So he had given me that number previously, but then he indicated today that it was more like 350 something. Then on the intent to serve letters, nothing to note on letters issued. We had an ADU and a number of remodels, so nothing too interesting. Letter intake, we did intake this letter a while ago in October, November period of 2024. There's a new development, 1360 Cravens Lane, 26,000 square feet, a total building of multifamily residential apartments under builder's remedy. 46 units consisting of 20 studio units, 18 one-bedroom units, 4 two-bedroom units, 4 three-bedroom units, 48 parking spaces. Still reviewing that submission and working through some of the details before we issue the letter. And then there's a new single-family residential residence going up in the lower portion of Rancho Monte Alegre. Nothing to report on operations unless you have any questions. I'll skip over that one and move into the water supply report. We're heavy with water, even though it's an extremely dry year. So we're in that transition period, and one of two things will happen after this year. We'll continue to be in a drought, and we'll see these supplies start to decline rapidly. Or we'll have a wet year and we'll be in a cycle of wet-dry, which is good. It's a good place to be because we are able to store more water, capture and store more water, and we are further from any drought emergencies. So this is just a combination of state water and Kachuma water. This actually number went up. There was an issue, an increase in state water issue to, I think, it's 35% now. So this will go up a little bit from 15% to 35%. This is the available Kachuma supplies year by year at this time of year. Again, we're the highest we've been in 4 years, so that's great. Well production, so this looks a little different. This was a drier year. This looks a little different than the last dry year, only because we're at the beginning of, or at the full, if we are going to, we're sort of at the beginning of a drought. We also pumped early this year, so we got our full 1,000 acre foot goal done before December. So January's pumping was very low. So this is just another graph of how we pump. So we pumped. I didn't move that out of the way. We pumped early in July through December, and so you can kind of see the accumulation of pumping on the blue line, and then I'm sorry, the blue line is sort of the target line. We actually pumped enough by November to hit our 1,000 acre foot goal. And so now looking forward till June, the end of the fiscal year, we'll just stop pumping. We'll pump a little bit to keep the wells in working order, but it really won't amount to any significant accumulation of groundwater. Metered consumption, so you can see this year it's much higher than previous years. And so that's obviously because it's been a very dry few months. Although we had a wet storm, you'll see in a few slides that the total accumulation of rain is well below average. This is a chart that we put together to look at the relationship with rainfall. And so we had a lot of rainfall in December, and the gray line on the top is the average projected sales for the period in a dry year, and then the line on the bottom is the average projected sales for a wet year, and the blue line is the actual sales. So you can see we're actually well above, particularly in January, well above where we've been historically on average in this month and during dry years. So the rains mid-February may change this. This only goes through January, so there was some rain that happened in February. Consumption, so this is the aggregate consumption, both M&I and ag. Target line is the orange line, max expected line is the gray line, and the blue line is our actual. And so here we are kind of right in between the two. This is a breakdown between ag and M&I, that same chart. You can see agriculture is really the big user here. They're well above the max line in this month, whereas M&I has been riding below the line, and then of course it meets the projected line in January. So in terms of rainfall for the year, as of 2/18, we had in Carpinteria 5.13 inches, which is very, very low. Our normal annual rainfall for the total year, which we haven't obviously gotten through the rainy season, but our normal total average is like between 17 and 18 inches. So pretty low. So for the year, we're at 30% of the total year, and for year to date, what we would normally get at this time, we're 45% below. Kachuma is also in the same boat. Kachuma in the watershed that feeds Kachuma, 39% to date and 25% for the year. Kachuma Reservoir, fortunately, was full at the beginning of this last water year, and so although it was full, it's declining. It's 88% as of February 18th. And so we'll be watching that, particularly if we don't get any more rainfall this year. State reservoirs are all pretty full, again, because last year was a relatively wet year. We have a lot of Southern California reservoirs being full. There has been a significant amount of rain in the northern part of the state, and so these reservoirs are above average as well. Shasta is the federal reservoir, and Oroville is the state water reservoir. So you can see both of those are above historic averages for this time of year. But drought is creeping in. You can see here the red zone is an extreme drought conditions on the drought monitor. And so, again, if we don't see much rain for the rest of February, well, rest of March and April of this year, we would expect this to get redder. So that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, just one naive question. You mentioned the allocation, I think it was state water allocation went from 15 to 35 percent. Is
This one?
that a good number? And is that just driven by rainfall in the north that they're allowing more to come down?
Yeah, so it's driven mostly by rainfall and snowpack. They have three indicators across the Sierras to look at snowpack. And then they look at Oroville Reservoir to see what the storage looks like, projected storage.
Still feels like a low number, though. Why
It is a low
isn't
number.
Why isn't it higher?
Well, one of the big constraints is the highway that they move water from Oroville to Southern California is the Bay Delta. You may have heard of the conflicts in the Bay Delta, but the big conflicts are there are endangered species in that delta, and there are certain times of the year you can't move water through. There's also salinity issues because it is open to the ocean, and so if you move water through and then it's dry and then the salinity moves in, that causes problems. There's problems with the islands within the delta being unstable and potentially caving in and causing seawater. So there are a lot of balancing acts in that conveyance system. And so one of the projects that the State Water Project contractors have been working on is this pipeline that goes around the Bay Delta.
I think, did you say 35?
35, yeah.
Well, that's what I was trying to understand. Is it a good number? And
We're so used to 0 to 5.
Yeah, we actually had 100% one year, not too long ago, a few years ago. So it
We
varies.
didn't need it, right?
Yes, exactly. It varies wildly.
something about low expectations.
When is the last adjustment they usually make?
April.
Probably could be an adjustment upward from 35.
Yeah, depending on the rainfall and water conditions.
All the variables included.
We're good? Thank you, Bob. So then we move on to item number 11, closed session, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. District negotiator Robert McDonald, employee organization, unrepresented employees. Then we're going to go to closed session right now.
Recording stopped.
the way you're gonna get it.
You did it a few times and I never
Recording in progress.
We're back in open session on item number 11, no reportable action. Then we go down to item number 12, and that reads as follows. Summary of employment agreements, assistant general manager, district engineer, and operations manager. Contract term 2 years. Changes included $250,000 in life insurance. Salary adjustments based on the salary and benefit study effective July 1st, 2024. That's for assistant general manager, placed at step 15 of range 52. District engineer placed at step 12, range 52. Operations manager placed at step 13 of range 50. Then board secretary, IT, accountant, and associate engineer. Contract terms 5 years with 3-year option to reopen. Agreement details. Vacation cash out consistent with memorandum of understanding with no time services required. Salary adjustment based on the salary and benefit study effective November 24, 2024. Board secretary placed on step 12 of race 23. Vacation accrual increased from 10 days annually to 15 days annually. IT accountant placed in range 42 and Y rated. Associate engineer placed at step 1 of range 44. Made exempt status, granted 5 administrative days per year. All 5 positions will receive a cost of living adjustment consistent with the MOU. And we need a motion, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Director O'Connor,
Aye.
Director Holcomb,
Yes.
Director Balch,
Aye.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
and Director Van Wingerden.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Then we got item number 13, consider dates and items for the agenda for Carpinteria Valley Water District Board meeting of March 12, 2025.
I have one.
That's fine.
Hey, Bob, I'd like to, going back to the CAP project, I just think it's only 2 months before we're going to be sending out, talking to bidders and sending out RFPs, and we're still a little bit unsure about that federal funding, so I wouldn't mind an update, only when there is an update, but that's 8 weeks away to make sure that we're itemized on the, so I know you guys are working
Yeah,
both ends on that, I
Yeah, we'll
do.
continue to do funding updates probably every month at a minimum. So you'll get one.
It has to be listed so that we can go out
Yes.
to,
Yep.
and we're looking at May to do that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And then at 5:30 p.m., Carpinteria City Hall, 5775 Carpinteria Avenue, Carpinteria, California, and we are adjourned.
Thanks.